you have to find these deals that where there's a component of value add. If you can raise the rents, if you can add rubs, if you can add fees on, if you can lower expenses, that's what you're looking to do. And unfortunately, in this type of market, you're paying a little bit more than what you would normally do. So you really have to find out what the value adds are. If there's no value adds in a deal, you're going to struggle.
My name is Jamie Gruber. I'm the host of our Multifamily and More virtual meetup. It's an interactive podcast. The idea here is not just to be a broadcast, but to get people interacting with our guests. And tonight we have one hell of a guest. So I'm excited about this. This guy's made a huge difference in my life, like David said. So we'll get to that in a moment. Our sponsor for tonight's broadcast is CF Asset Group. Check us out, our website, cfassetgroup.com. Go on Facebook, like the page, YouTube channel where we're developing content for that. But subscribe to that. We'll have a whole bunch of stuff out there for you to really give everybody here as much value as we possibly can. The other thing is, if you're not a member of one of our meetups, so I run here the Michigan Multifamily and More group, but we've actually expanded that to 8 different cities or states. So we've got Cleveland, Minnesota, South Florida, Baltimore Metro, Tampa, Chattanooga, and as of this past week, we just opened up Salt Lake City. Again, thanks to this guy sitting right next to me and on the screen, who awesome. Connected me with somebody that's down in that area and is going to start it up. Brock, welcome aboard. So we have a bunch of different groups. Sign up for one, and we'll get you all the content we have. So tonight, how it works essentially is I'll start this off with an intro of Gino. We'll get into a couple questions that I have. Gino, like he said at the beginning, if you were here, has a PowerPoint that he had sent along. It's got a great bit of information on his first deal. So I want to get to that at some point, maybe halfway through our time together. But along the way, guys, if you have questions, throw your questions up in the chat box, comments, whatever. In fact, let's get it started with where are you? Maybe even your experience. How many units do you have? Maybe you're a beginner and you can say that, but let's get a little bit of activity in the chat box. Let me know you can hear us as well, if any issues, but questions as we go along through the night, as Gino's, dropping a bunch of information, throw them in there. I'll keep an eye on that and I'll make sure he gets those questions and can answer them if he doesn't see them.
Yeah, that'd be great. Because if you get chats, I'm going to try not to look at them too much because I really need to concentrate. So if I see chats, they distract me. So if you see a question pop up, don't be afraid to interrupt me and say, hey, listen, I got a question on this. So please keep an eye out for those questions. Okay. Okay.
So I'm going to give you your proper intro, if that's all right with you.
A proper intro. Just Gino Barbaro. That's the proper intro.
Well, that's the first 2 words I have on my intro. But Gino Barbaro, for those that have been under a rock, is an investor, a business owner, an author, and an entrepreneur. Am I allowed to say the G Daddy, or is that like trademarked by Jay?
My wife gets a little ruffles her feathers, but I said, hey, it is anonymous. Anybody can call the G Daddy the G Daddy. So you're more than welcome. I love it.
I love it. He has grown his real estate portfolio to over, it says 1,100 multifamily units. I think it's 13 now, is it not?
It's going to be 15 by the end of the month. We're closing on 240 units. So, yeah.
Got to update your bio. Got to update that bio.
Yeah, I know.
He's the co-founder of Jake and Gino, as many of you know, a multifamily real estate education company, one that I have gotten a ton of value out of, including my business partner, Benoit, who's lurking out there in the shadows of this webinar. That education company offers coaching, training, and real estate founded upon their proprietary framework. And they're so true. Buy right, finance right, manage right. Those 3 things are so simple. And I love the wheelbarrow, 2 pillars with that manage right always spinning, right? Mm-hmm. He's the best-selling author of 2 books, Wheelbarrow Profits, which is a very good book, and Family Food and the Friars, and graduated from IPEC, Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, which I want to start with, where he earned his designation as a certified professional coach. He currently resides in sunny St. Augustine, Florida. He's a New York expat with his beautiful wife, Julia, and his 6 very beautiful children, which I had the privilege of meeting briefly when I was down there with him. So Gino, welcome. So happy to have you. This means a ton. My heart's racing based on all that you have done for me, for Ben, for the company that we're starting. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Hey, listen, remember, to be able to get, you have to be able to give, right? So I love to give of my time, especially the Jake and Gino students. I always say I have the fiduciary responsibility to take care of my community. And what you're doing here is cultivating a great environment. You're getting people on who want to talk about multifamily. That's the most important thing. Let's create that environment. Let's create the place where, you know what, let's talk about deals. Let's talk about like-minded people being on, being able to ask questions and being able to champion each other. That's the most important thing.
Excellent. Yeah, we got some people commenting in here. Mary, congratulations. West Cleveland bought a duplex and a fourplex.
All right,
Seller
Mary.
financing. Awesome. Glad to
Yes.
be here. Yeah, glad to
Yes.
have you.
That's
Glad-
awesome. Congratulations.
So let's start with this, Gino. So you talk about IPEC. I don't know if the IPEC. It sounds like it would be how you would say it, but
Mhm.
the coaching that you've gotten into, and you've talked a lot in your podcasts and webinars you've done, anything else about mindset and how much you've leveled up your network and the work you've done on you, and it's such an integral part, I feel, of being an investor, like the right mindset, like who you are versus just what you're doing, right? So talk to me about, if you don't mind, I guess, start with your background, your story, how you got here, which most people know, but give us the skinny on that. But then what was that transformational work that you did? Why'd you do it? What was it? And what did it mean for you?
Sure. I mean, I'll give you the 30-second overview. 1994, bought my restaurant, had it for 20 years, 22 years with my father, loved it for the first 15. 2008 comes, I've got 4 kids at the time, not making enough money, working harder, making less money, the same skill story that everyone else has. I started blaming the economy, I started blaming the president, I started blaming everybody, and then I scratched my head, I said, hold on a second, there's other people out there making millions of dollars, what are they doing that I'm not doing? So I struggled on for a couple of years, and fortunately, thank God for me, I found life coaching. Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. It's a great school. I went to life coaching school. At the time, I was struggling because I don't know what my why was. Everyone thinks that just because they make money, they become financially free, that's going to solve all their problems. It's not going to solve all your problems. More money creates more problems if you don't know what to do with that money or how to be a steward of that money. I found out what my why was. My why ultimately was trying to help other people, which was really weird because I was stuck in the kitchen washing dishes, making $15 an hour. Who am I helping back there? And I know I had a better skill set. So being a man of faith, sitting in the kitchen saying to myself, I'm wasting my time. I had great parents. I had a great education. What am I doing here wasting my time? So that was my driving force of, I don't want to be on my bedside because everyone says, what are people going to look at you when you're at your funeral? I don't want to be on my deathbed saying, man, I remember washing those dishes. I want to be on my deathbed saying, man, I really helped and motivated a lot of people to get out of their day, get out of their drudgery, get out of their traffic fighting, and actually learn a skill, whether it's multifamily or whether it's life coaching, to propel themselves to a better life. So that's how IPEC really helped me out. The personal development is awesome. It is all about your mindset. It really is. You can have 2 people with very similar skill sets. It's all about figuring out what your why is and then tapping into your why. Why are you buying multifamily? I mean, we all have different reasons. My reason was I wanted to have a lifestyle. I wanted to be able to create a business that I could scale up. And then all of a sudden, from that one little investment property, what you're doing, we had multiple streams of income. We call it multifaceted. You start creating a little property management company. You start creating a little mortgage company. You start creating a syndication company. You start creating an education company. All of a sudden, you have multiple businesses. And it's not like when I became financially free, my D-Day was March 1st of 2016. It's not like I said, I'm going to the beach. I went to the beach for 2 days. Then after that, you get bored. I'm a worker, right? I wanted to do something that was fulfilling more than anything else. That's what I wanted to do. Something that was fulfilling to me. And that's what multifamily was to me. In the beginning, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's a lot of work, and it will always be a lot of work. You don't want it to be sunshine and rainbows because you want to be challenged. You want to be uncomfortable to get out of that comfort zone and to continue to grow. Because when people are stuck in that rut, what is that rut? It's either being a victim or being really pissed off, and you cannot get out of that. And so what I want to do is just to push myself, get a little more comfortable every day, a little more uncomfortable. And as you get more uncomfortable, you tend to grow. So 30 seconds turned into 2 minutes. Sorry about that, but I think it needed that intro.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you work with people on like in the somebody comes to you and say, hey, I want to learn about what you do, multifamily, everything else. How much of that time do you spend on mindset? Is that a key component of it, or do you go right into the brass tacks of how to invest?
Every person is different. Like every one of my 6 children, right? Everyone needs a little something different. I have an online training that I can share with everyone on the call. I've created on our Kajami platform right now. Basically, you have to work on mindset. You have to work on your why. You have to focusing on learning your goals. So that's an important element of it. But what we do also is in the private Facebook group, we have a lot of students on there posting and, creating that environment, I said, basically. So we do have to work on the mindset. That's the important thing. But a lot of students who already come to us, they already know what their why is. They're already at their last stand going, multifamily is for me. So we definitely incorporate it into the training.
Yeah. No, I think of this book, you talked about it before, this Outwitting the Devil with being a drifter, right? Somebody who who doesn't take control of their own mind, take control of their own thoughts and everything else like that. You've gone the exact opposite way with that. In fact, to the point where you, if you don't mind me, you homeschool your children, correct?
Yes, my wife does.
Tell me about the why. Why do you do that?
Well, for me, believe it or not, when my daughter, she's 19 now, she's a sophomore in college. My wife's sister did it, and then I did it. For me, it was great. I was actually learning the faith again. I was doing religion with her in the morning, so it was awesome. I would spend an hour before I went to the restaurant, and I would do school with them. And, fast forward to today, I spend 20, 30 minutes before I start work. We all come over here. We hang out. We do a little reading together. So for me, it's all about family, and it's great because my kids play together. It's just a great experience, right? I want to teach my kids about money. I want to teach my kids about relationships. I want them to have the emotional intelligence that you need that they don't teach in school. So for me, that's why it was really important more than anything else. And to be honest with you, it is lifestyle too, because if we want to take a week off, I don't have a schedule. If they've got to go to gymnastics 11 in the morning like today, there's no school. We'll do school later on in the afternoon. So for us, it afforded me a level of freedom. And it's also an entrepreneurial mindset because there's no schedule. You make your own schedule. You create your own life. So which is what I love about it. Can you hear me?
Yep. Now I can.
Good.
Yep. Gotcha. Yeah, we should be good. I think we're good.
Mm-hmm.
we're getting a little bit of choppiness on my end, but that's my connection, not yours. One other thing on mindset, I guess maybe it's kind of countercultural, but talk to me about your view on kind of the old staples around money. So retirement accounts, 401ks, all of that. Like, how have you leveraged those? Because I know you had retirement accounts at one point, maybe you still do, but how have you leveraged those? What's your general viewpoint? Maybe how have you utilized those to build your fortune?
It's a great question. Back in 2008, I read the book Killing Sacred Cows by Garrett Gunderson. I read it, didn't really give it a second thought. Okay, book. I read it about a year ago. I was like, holy crap, I'm doing all this stuff now. I don't know what happened. Read the book Killing Sacred Cows. We podcasted Garrett Gunderson. Why would anybody want to do a 401k? You're getting into business with the government, basically. You're giving them their money for the next 30 years. It's in a 401k account that's locked away. You can't touch it until you're 59 and a half. I blew mine up 3 years ago. I had $100 grand in it, blew it up, took the $10,000 penalty with cost segregation. I didn't pay any federal taxes. That money went into a deal, didn't go into a car, didn't go into a vacation. It went into a deal. Now, I don't recommend that for everybody. Talk to a financial advisor, but for me, it was the best way to get that money. Now, if you're on that path, just remember one thing: 401ks, they can be good if your company's matching it and the money's there. But my problem is the lost opportunity cost. You will not be able to touch that money for the next 25 to 30 years. I don't like that. I want to have my money today. I want to be able to invest my own money today. I want to be able to control my money. So for me, it doesn't work. And I think a lot of students who have money that they can't tap it out, maybe roll it over into a solo 401k and invest that money passively, put it into a limited partnership. You can do something like that to get your feet wet, maybe do some private lending, but take control. You need to be financially savvy and take control of your financial future. Don't be a drifter. You need to learn all these skills to take control of your life.
Okay. We have a question here about mindset. So I'm working on starting my day right. What do you do to start your day on the right mindset or in the right mindset?
It's funny. I've changed my things so many different times. I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning now, usually. I try to go for a walk. If not, what I'll do is I like to get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee with my wife, come up in my room here, and I'll just pray a little with my kids for about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm really grateful. For me, it's almost like I'm playing with house money right now. So I try to really show a lot of gratitude, and I don't want to pray when things are going bad. I want to pray and be thankful. And when you start off the day with gratitude and what you're grateful for, it's like everything else just works itself into, if something goes bad that day, you're like, I have so many things to be grateful for. Try to get that exercise in. I try to eat really healthy. Try to block out time in the day to really focus on some really big tasks. Try to shut the phone off. Not, every couple hours I'll check it, but I really need to stay focused on certain things. I'm a content creator, so I've got a lot of stuff going on. So as far as mindset goes, work on yourself. In the morning is the best time. If you've got any heavy lifting objects to do, any big tasks to do, try to do them in the morning before you start your day. Because as your day goes, you're going to get decision fatigue. By the time 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock comes around, you're ready to punch out. So if you can get it done in the morning before you go to work, and the best thing is try to do something you really like in the morning. What are the favorite things you like to do? Do you like to read? Do you like to ride a bike? Do you like to walk? Do you like to swim? Try to do that in the morning. Try to start your day off with a lot of fun, and I'm sure the rest of the day will follow. Does that make sense?
Gino's frozen on my end right now. I don't know if that's the same for everybody out there, but it's been freeing up for me here. Gino, I don't know if you can still hear me.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. All right, cool. There is one more question in here, and it was, as you've grown to 1,500 units, how do you keep your mindset with that many units, managing and not letting all of the problems get to you?
Well, I mean, that's another great question. You don't do that overnight, right? I don't have 6 kids in a year, right? It takes time. You build muscle, right? Multifamily, like having children. The first one is really difficult. You don't know what you're doing. You're out of control, and it's scary. It's exciting, but it's really scary. The second child, I don't know. You still know what you're doing, but it's okay. You've gone through one. Second one can't be that bad, right? The third one comes, now you're outnumbered. But you know what? It's exciting because you've got cash flow coming in, right? And you've got some deals done. You've got some experience. By the time the fourth child comes, you've got it down. You've got some systems going on. You're growing your business. By the time the fifth one comes, it's so much fun. And that's how it happened with me with multifamily. The first couple of deals, it was tough, right? It was very difficult. We weren't able to scale up. Had those, 200 units within the first 2 years. From there, we started really getting on our property managers, started hiring property managers and leasing agents and maintenance guys. That allowed us to scale. Now Jake runs day to day for the property manager. We have our own property management company, and we have about 40 employees. So it's those baby steps. When you first start out, you're going to start small. You're going to do a lot of the work yourself. And then as you grow, you're going to be able to hire people and help you with it. And, David Finkel is saying today, you have a choice. If you're going to be I'm a person, I'm going to do everything, and I'm going to control everything, you have to change your mindset. You have to think of yourself as an asset manager, not just a landlord. You're going to be an asset manager, and you're going to be an investor. If you can think of it that way and start scaling up, that's going to really help you out.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So real quick, I'm getting chop on my end, but I'm being told that it's just me. So you're coming through loud and clear to everybody.
Good.
Apologies to everyone else. My connection for some reason is getting a bit unstable, but we'll keep rolling. We'll figure it out. Right. We'll make it happen and move on from there. So those are all the questions I had from the group. Let me shift over if I could. I want to talk about partnership for a little bit because this was a concept that was scary to me. And in some ways still can be a little bit, selecting the right partner, managing that partnership, all of that stuff. I think the beauty of your group is that it gave me the courage and the ability to really find a partner, because Ben and I found each other in your group, but also just understand how a partnership can work really, really effectively together. Watching you and Gino, watching you and Jake, I should say. So talk to me about partnership. How does it work? Because you guys have been a really, really successful partnership and have made a huge brand out of it. How did you find each other? Why does it work? And how do you find a partner and maintain a solid partnership with somebody?
Well, great question. I've got the chat from Joe Kilmer. Joe, the only way you're going to scale out from a landlord is to find a partner, because you can't do everything yourself. There's just not, when you have 10 or 15 or 20 units, yeah, that's fine. But as you start scaling and getting bigger, who's going to raise the capital? Who's going to run the day-to-day? Who's going to have the net worth on their balance sheet? Who's going to be, underwriting deals? Who's going to be going out and looking at these deals? There's just not enough time in the day to do it all by yourself. So Jake and I were fortunate. I met him back at the restaurant. He was a drug rep, and he was Joe, you're exactly on the 20 units. So now is the time. Your next one is gonna break you out, and it's gonna be a really great process. After 20 units, our first deal was 25 units. The next one was 36. So we had 60 units within 6 months of us purchasing it. We were fortunate that we had resident managers. The third one brought us to 200. So what I was saying, Jake and I met at the restaurant. He was a drug rep. What I liked about Jake, when you're looking for a partner, look for core values. You want to have very similar core values as far as integrity goes, as far as hard work goes. One thing with Jake, he's a hard worker. He's working till all times of the night. He's putting in on the weekends. And listen, I've been going since 8 o'clock this morning, so I'm the same way as him. You need to be able to both work hard and just be able to make no excuses. And as Jamie's alluded to a couple of times, we make it happen. You don't make excuses, you make it happen. The great thing I would love about partnerships is he's pushing me and I'm sort of pushing him. And we're starting a second podcast. We're going to be called Movers and Shakers, as if I didn't have enough stuff to do, right? He's like, we should do another podcast. Okay, we'll do another podcast. He's doing another podcast for Rand Capital. So partnerships are great. They can push you, they can motivate you, they can give you a lot of ideas. And listen, when you're having a tough day, you call up your partner, and your partner's supposed to be uplifting you. He's supposed to pick you up. So when you're looking for a partner, like I said, you guys can have similar skill sets, but it's always good to have, like you, Jamie, you're the more one that's more outgoing, and Benoit's the more number crunching guy. So I think with Jake, it's sort of the same thing. He's more of the kick the doors down kind of guy. And I am more of the, okay, let me talk to the sales guy, and let me just like work with the community and work that aspect of it. So I think we complement ourselves well that way. But as you're growing, we've added other partners on. Every single deal you have can be partner specific. If you're doing a deal, make sure you have an operating agreement, make sure you fill out the responsibilities and roles. I'll give you an example. In our syndication company, there's 4 of us. And the syndication company, when you're doing a 250 unit deal, the due diligence is big. We have responsibilities for each one of us. I'll look at the insurance loss runs. I'll look at the lease reports. I will look at the bank statements. I'll look at all the other operating expenses. Jake will do something else. He'll go due diligence on the property. My partner, Mike, will look at something else. And Dylan will look at something else. So the roles and responsibilities have to be really delegated well and make sure that everyone hits them. And the great thing about it is you need to get on weekly calls. You need to be constantly communicating with your partner. I've spoken to Jake, I think 6 times today. We did a podcast today too. And I've spoken to him 5 or 6 other times. And that's what it is. You need to work with somebody you like. That's probably the most important thing. If you don't like your partner, get rid of the partnership, just dissolve it because it's not worth all that torture. No matter how well it works, if you just don't like each other, you can't work together. That's what I found. What about you, Jamie? What do you think?
Agreed. No. The thing that Benoit and I started with was that relationship. We actually did disc profiles together just so we understood what our communication style was. Learned that we were complementary skill sets, right? As you mentioned, he's more analytical and I'm not. So it was a good blend between us. And as we talked about our goals and our aspirations and some mindset stuff, there was just a lot of similarity, a lot going on for the 2 of us together that it just became symbiotic. And so far it's been great. We do have an operating.
Yeah, let me put one more point, which I think is really important. What a partnership has allowed me to do is it has allowed me to do what I love to do. And it has allowed Jake to do what he loves to do. Jake loves the property management day to day. I love the education to do day to day. And then we'll feed off and we'll do a little bit of everything else. But when you have a partnership, you can spend time on something that you love to do, which is really cool. I never thought I could do that. I always thought that I have to do all the grinding work, all the stuff that I didn't like. But the partnership has allowed me to gravitate towards what I'm really good at and focus on that.
Love it. Love it. So with that, you mentioned something a second ago that I wanted to get into next. So nice segue. And that is syndication. So you're the king of JV, right? You and Jake have done everything. You own everything, maybe with a money partner behind the scenes. I'm not sure, but you own everything. Now you're talking about syndication. And I would say probably early on in your career, that was something that you weren't really, you thought, why syndicate? We'll just buy deals or whatever. And now you're starting that syndication. So talk to me about that evolution and why now? Why syndication now? Why is it something that you're interested in? Do you regret not doing it sooner?
Yes, and yes, and yes. And the problem is what you don't know, right, Jamie? I didn't know in the beginning, right? I was being ignorant. And that's why I tell people you need to get educated. You need to surround yourself with really amazing people and smarter people. When we first started out, I only thought, hey, listen, I'm going to buy deals, me and Jake, and it's fine. And basically, Jake and I bought our first deal with my brother. And then our second deal, we brought on our partner, Mike, who was a stronger balance sheet. He's a hedge fund guy. I'm in the pizzeria. I have pizza sauce on my shirt. He walks in. He starts talking about gold and oil, and I just respond back to him. I'm talking about inflation. So he looked at me half cockeyed. That's why you need to be ready, right? The richest man in Babylon says you're ready. I wasn't lucky at that point. I had years of experience, years of training, and I knew what to say to Mike at that time. So I sat down with him. I said, Mike, we're doing deals in Tennessee. The numbers don't work here. You've got a single family home in New Canaan, Connecticut. That's $2 million. You're getting $10,000 a month in rent. Numbers ain't working for you. So on our second deal, he partnered with us. And then, from there up to 1,000 units, it's only been me, Jake, and Mike. We've been buying the deals. We've been able to refi and roll the money. We're up to almost $9 million in refinance proceeds out of our deals. And we're going to do another refi next week for another $600,000. So basically what a refi and roll is, you're buying the property, you're raising that NOI. And when you add additional debt on, we're usually going from a community bank at 25-year amortizations, which is recourse, to non-recourse, the agency, which is a 30-year amortization. Interest rates have been around the same, and you're going to non-recourse debt. So payments do go up sometimes. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. But then you get 3 to 5 years of interest only. And you know what happens with that. It's great. The income has already gone up, so the additional income allows for that debt payment to come on. Now, when I started out, we should have started syndication sooner. I was more of an equity hound. Transactions pay the bills, equity can make you rich. My thing was syndication. What's great about syndication, and basically what a syndication is, you're getting a bunch of people together, you're taking their money, you're quote unquote the general partner, you're soliciting funds from them with the expectation of them not doing anything, and you're giving them a return. That's probably the simplest way to define a syndication. They're limited partners. Their only recourse in the deal is the deal itself. You know, they lose their 50,000, 100,000. That's all they lose. Us as the general partners in the syndication, we sign on the documents. The beautiful thing about syndication is a lot of the times, most of the times, general partners don't put any money into the deal for the general partner side. They'll put the money on the limited partner side. They'll have to put about 10%. So on our first deal, I always tell my students, think big, but start small. We started with 132 units syndication. It was about a $6 million deal. The LTV was 65% because rents were really low, so we needed to come up with additional money as a down payment. We needed to raise $2.6 million. So for us, it wasn't that bad for our first deal because we had 500 investors on our database. We had Dylan, who we brought on as the partner, to call them up. So you have to cultivate the relationships. Just because they're there, you need to start talking to people, starting to build out the business plan. So I wish I had started syndication sooner. It's only a tool in the toolbox. It's not the only one. You know, there's specific deals that we buy. We bought a deal back in December in-house, Jake, myself, and my partner Mike, because it was 146 units. We bought it for a great price, $26,000 a door. Hard to syndicate though, because the numbers are, it's great. The numbers aren't there to syndicate it because we won't be able to have cash flows for the next 6 to 12 months because we've got to evict people. We've got to clean the units up and get them going. So the syndicate, it was a small deal. I mean, I wouldn't syndicate nothing for less than $2 million because there's additional fees going on. You don't want to syndicate something that's really small, but at the same time, when we did our first deal, it was comfortable enough that we were able to raise all that money on that deal. So I wish I had started syndication sooner. I'm not going to lie to you, but you know what? You learn.
Absolutely. I'm curious, what's your exit on the syndication? Are you selling? Are you refinancing out? What is your planned exit?
Great question. Every deal is different. This first deal, we can't put a supplemental loan on. So we're probably going to have to sell after 3 to 5 years. I don't want to sell. We've done cost segregation on it. I love this deal. We bought it for $45,000 a unit. I think it's going to be worth $60,000 a unit within the next 12 to 18 months. Love to hold it because it's just a cash cow. It's just going to pay us like crazy. The second deal we're closing on in a week from now. We've got 6 years of interest only. We've got a 12-year term on it. That thing we may sell in the next 3 to 5 years also, because if we get rents up, you've got great data on that thing, we may be able to flip it over. So it's awesome. It's just depending on every single deal. Now on that one, we can put a supplemental loan and refinance that second one. So it's really deal specific. I don't like to sell, Jamie. I'm not going to lie to you. That's why syndication is one of those things that we didn't do in the beginning, because a lot of the exit strategies are get those fees up front, make your profit, and then sell and split on the back end. And that wasn't our strategy in the beginning. I see it. You're giving your investors their money back, then they're going to go into another deal. So it's a tool in the toolbox. And what syndication has allowed me to do also, Jamie, I should point out, it allows you to go bigger. It allows you to go bigger, quicker. It allows you to scale up. You can get those 100 units and start hiring leasing agents, start hiring property managers, and start really building a business. So that's what syndication allows you to do. We didn't need to do that in the beginning. We were fortunate that we had enough funds ourselves, that we refinanced a lot of the funds to buy additional deals. So if you want to start out, get some people together and create that syndication. You got a lot of questions here. You wanna throw these questions that they got here? I see. Can you break down cost segregation? Andrew, cost segregation is way over my pay grade. We have somebody who does it. Basically, what cost segregation is, it's an accelerated cost recovery system. It's a way where you can accelerate your depreciation. But they come in, they do a cost segregation study. It's an engineered study. They'll come in, they'll break things down into 5 years, 7 year, I think, and 15 year, and they'll accelerate the depreciation real quick. You can't depreciate land. So land gets pulled out. So all you're depreciating is the components, whether it's roofs, HVACs, hot water heaters, and you get a really big swell. And what they've done now is they've given bonus depreciation where you can take out in year one, you get all that depreciation. So it's awesome. I mean, it's just a big leverage, big hedge for us as far as, tax benefits are amazing. If you're a real estate professional, you can take all those losses against your income. And I mean, you get an amazing return on your money with cost segregation.
Okay. Yep. Sorry, I am getting a little cut out.
Okay, so you put together operating agreements together for syndication similar to partnerships. So Matt, every single one of our deals, I think we've got 13 or 14 LLCs. Every single deal has an operating agreement because some of our deals might have my brother in them. Some of the deals might not. So we want an operating agreement stipulating what the responsibilities are, what management fees are, what's going on. So it's very similar. The ones for syndications, the operating agreements, they tend to be a lot more expensive than regular partnerships. So I would definitely, and I don't want to do a partnership I'm always doing LLCs. I would never hold anything personally. So everything we do is an LLC, and we have operating agreements for them. Syndication seems a bit too much like a job. Joe, it might if you're doing it by yourself. The problem is that's what I thought. That's why I had to hire somebody on, and we split our syndication company up 4 ways. Me, my partner Jake, my partner Mike, and Dylan. Now it's a real company, and we're collecting asset management fees from that company. So as you can see, we have 400 units under management, and you're getting a 1% management fee every month. You can see that's some serious revenue. You've got acquisition fees coming in on the front end, which also pay you. So you're getting a serious business there. And it's something, like I said, you can't do it by yourself. I mean, if you can, you're either Superman or, I don't know, luckiest guy on the planet, but it is really difficult to do by yourself, do all these jobs by yourself. So, because, you know, you need to call these investors up. You need to set up these webinars. You need to get all this stuff done, but you can do it. You can do it with other people helping you out. So
yeah,
Alfred,
and I think one point real quick on that. I think there are different ways. There are different ways to syndicate as well. Like you can structure debt up front. You can give a little bit of equity on the back end. You can do different ways. But I see the point from Joe about I like the equity and control. I think you can still have that within syndication if you structure it in certain ways. So there's many different ways. It's not just 70-30 splits, right? There's other ways to do this. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. But
yeah, no, I agree. So let's think about that for a second. So you're still controlling part of the deal. I mean, if it's a 70-30 split, you as the general partner still controls 30% of the deal. You don't have any money in the deal. I mean, you want to talk about massive leverage. And then on top of that, you as the general partner gets part of that cost segregation write-off, and you don't have any money down in the deal. So for those of you who hate Donald Trump, why do you think he doesn't pay taxes? Because of cost segregation, and because of that. That's the reason why we all have the same ability to use the tax code. It doesn't matter who wrote it. It's written for the rich. The poor can use it also. It's very easy to use. Get a tax specialist. Stop going down to H&R Block, get your taxes done. Get a professional to do your taxes and to help you out. So
I real quick point on that about Trump. Like him or hate him when he said that. What was it? I'm too smart to pay taxes. I don't know if he's too smart or not, but the
no,
rich
he's not. Let me answer. Let me answer this question for you, Jamie.
This Alfredo question. Do you see that in there, Gino?
Yeah, I'm looking for Alfredo. With such low cap rates in current market, who is buying commercial multifamily? I can't find anything that makes sense with typical down payment of 30%. I'm just trying to understand what's going on in the market. So it depends where you're buying. I mean, sometimes cap rates are, I don't want to say a misnomer, but if you're buying, I had a student who bought a 6-unit property in LA. He bought it an actual 2.8 cap. He paid $930,000 for the property. He put $100,000 into the deal. So he's into it for $1 million. He raised the rents. There was the value add. So he raised it to a 4.8 cap. He sold it for $1.5 million. He made $500,000 in the deal. So it's not what cap rate you're buying at. You have to know where your exit cap is. So he knew that if he can buy it at 2.8, push all the rents up and get it out and at his exit cap, he'd make money. You have to find these deals where there's a component of value add. If you can raise the rents, if you can add rubs, if you can add fees on, if you can lower expenses, that's what you're looking to do. And unfortunately, in this type of market, you're paying a little bit more than what you would normally do. So you really have to find out what the value adds are. If there's no value adds in a deal, you're going to struggle. The other thing is, I think you need to choose a market. Be familiar with, Jamie, I told you, find a market, focus on that market, and really crunch it down and figure out where you're buying in that market. If you don't do that, you're going to be going all over the place and comparing LA to Chattanooga, to Nashville, to Knoxville, to St. Augustine. Those markets are all different. They all have different metrics. So you really need to focus on, what market, you're working on.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
It does completely. And then we've got another question. Could you give a high level overview of a recent syndication that you put together? How many people, what were the skill sets, et cetera?
So perfect. I mean, the first one we did, it was me and Jake, my partner Mike, and my partner Dylan. There's 4 of us. I don't think you need 4, but you know what? That's just the way it was. We brought Dylan on. Like I said, we had 500 investors. So before the deal goes, the first thing you need to do when you're doing syndication or raising money is you need to start creating relationships yesterday. And if you can't do it yesterday, you got to do it today. Because when you get a deal, if you're doing what they say a 506B, that you can have only sophisticated and accredited, you have to have that relationship before you find the deal. So you need to get out there and you need to start talking to people. So that's what Dylan had to do. Dylan had on the phone for hours and hours. For the first 3 to 4 weeks he was on with us, we were scheduling phone calls. We had people in our database, in our CRM, and all he did was call. Him and Jake went out and started looking at deals. They were driving up to Louisville. They were driving up down to Chattanooga. We found the deal in Louisville. Once the deal was put together, the wonderful thing about Jake and Gino is I already had relationships. I had a syndication attorney, Kim Taylor, who was fantastic. I had an insurance agent. I had brokers. We had a property management company up there that we liked. We were already looking at, leasing agents. So the process was you put the deal down in August. You need to get a timeline moving very quickly, because you cannot start collecting funds for your deal into a bank account until you have all of your documents created. Documents are going to take 2 to 3 weeks. That's an operating agreement, a private placement memorandum, a subscription agreement. That's why in your first deal, a syndication might be a little bit more difficult to do, because there's some more moving parts. It's not impossible. I've had students who've done a syndication on the first deal. So for us, we got those documents ready. Then the next thing was we had to start creating webinars and start sending out emails. So Dylan and I worked on the webinars. In this economy, you need to be transparent, number one, and you need to be giving to getting. That's what I said. So for us, it was easy. You want to invest with us? We're going to give you 12 webinars after the deal's done. We're going to teach you about this process. So that's what our investors have gotten. We were just on a webinar 2 hours ago at 6 o'clock. We had our 5th webinar, our 5th month of the deal. We've been giving them updates every month. So that process, everyone was on board. We got the deal. We got the deal in August. We got the contract written out. As soon as we got the contract, we had to go through due diligence. Like I said, we did all the leases. We did all the due diligence. We did all the money raising, and it was fun. Actually, it was a lot of fun the first time. It wasn't as stressful as I thought, because we had a great syndication attorney and we had a lot of guys helping out, and it really made it a lot easier. So it moves. It just moves quick. You just have to get ready, and you have to have. People say, should I get a deal first and then look for the money, or should I have the money and then get the deal? I would say start creating a case study, creating a credibility book, like I taught you, Jamie. Get your business plan out there and just start meeting people for coffee. Go out, drink some coffee, and let them know what you're doing. Offering an opportunity. I'm getting into real estate. I want to, take some deals down. Would you like to hear what we're doing? And have the whole model given out. We give an 8% preferred rate of return. We like to hold these deals 3 to 7 years. So give them a timeline. We are in affordable housing. We like to look at 100 units plus. We like to look in the Southeast because of the tenant laws and because we're vertically integrated. We property manage. So give them the whole story. Get to know them, create that substantive relationship, and then all of a sudden create a meetup. This is what Jamie's doing. Get people on the call and start sharing with what you're learning. Get them excited. Why multifamily? Well, listen, multifamily is a hard asset. People need a place to live. 36% of the population in the United States is renting, as opposed to 31% 10 years ago. The affordable housing crisis is real. When people lose their jobs, what are they going to do? They're not going to buy homes. They're going to rent. The millennials have too much student debt to buy homes. The baby boomers are getting out of their homes, buying RVs or renting. So the demographics is there for multifamily. You want to be in the stock market? You want to go that crazy run where all of a sudden Trump does something stupid and the stock market loses 2,000 points? You have no control. With our asset, you have control. And so that's how you start the process of syndication and how you start raising money,
Yep, no, absolutely. So we've got a question about exit strategies. They've always heard about more than one exit strategy, but can you elaborate on what that might mean? What do exit strategies look like?
I mean, an exit strategy to us, we haven't exited yet. So we're actually looking to exit a deal right now. I mean, when you're buying something, the whole thing is, like you mentioned, it's the buy right, the manage right, and the finance right. If you buy it wrong, your exit strategy is going to be a lot longer. Now, how do I know that? Back in 2006, I bought a deal up in New York. Why did I buy it wrong? I didn't buy it wrong because of the end of the cycle, although that was it. The demographics stunk. The market stunk. The rent growth was terrible. The tenants were terrible. And I paid because I didn't know all that. So my exit was exit and sell it for a loss. Best thing I ever did. Lost a ton of money, but I learned so much about it. So when you're talking about an exit strategy, when you're buying a deal, like Jake and I on our first deal, we had really no exit strategy. Our strategy was, let's buy this, let's run this, let's make this our little cash cow, a golden goose that's laying golden eggs. And if we can refinance the property, let's refinance the property, pull the money out of the deal. We have no more money left in this deal. Repurpose that money we took, and let's go buy another deal. and let's rinse and repeat. That's what our strategy is. We've cost segregated that deal. It's given us a loss on paper, and then just continue to do that. Now, you need to look at every deal you're looking at, because some deals are not long-term holds. Some deals you can buy, you can reposition them, and then you can flip them depending on what you need. Do you need cash to get into another deal? If you're syndicating a deal, one of the benefits is after you've held it for 3 years, you split it, you sell it, you make a profit. You normally split those proceeds, whether it's 70% to the limited partners and 30% to yourself. So you can get a really nice payday, get that money. It is a taxable event unless you 1031 it, and then you can get that money and put that into another deal. Is that your strategy? It all depends upon what you're looking to do. I'm still young. I'm still generational. I still want to control that. What I might end up doing is maybe selling some of those C minus assets and going into the better asset classes, maybe the B minus, B plus assets. Not yet. We love the space that we're in. We're buying some assets that are a little bit newer, but I think exit strategy really focuses on each individual asset and each individual investors. As you were talking about the partners, it's really important. Jake and I, we don't want to sell. We don't want to fix and flip. We want to buy and hold these things. So make sure that you're on the same page with your partner. That's what your goals are. That's what our goals were. That's what our goals with Mike and Dylan are. We're here to build a business, a long-term business that's going to pay us and continue to create wealth for us. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Completely. I do have one side question before we get to this one. You talked about refi. What's the typical seasoning period that you go from the time that you finish your repositioning, you've got rents where you want them and all of that stuff, leases in place, to the point at which you refi into agency debt or like you called it before, non-recourse debt? What's that timeline? Is it a year? Is it 6 months? Does it depend? What does that look like?
Yeah, the question is really, it depends, because it depends on how many units you have, depends how long. They want at least 3 to 6 months of seasoning. Once you've turned the asset over, they're going to want at least 3 to 6 months of stabilized income. When you're buying a property, 90% for 90 days is a stabilized property. You cannot get Fannie or Freddie financing agency if it's not 90% for 90 days. You're either going to have to go with community or bridge. So take that into consideration. They're going to want to see, and you know, it's funny, when people are looking to underwrite a property, go to your community bank or go to an agency debt or a broker. They will know what the expenses are on a property. That's the tip right there of the call. If you're underwriting a deal, most new investors always underwrite deals with lower expenses. If you don't know the expenses in the market, go to a community banker or go to a mortgage broker who's underwriting these deals in that market, and they will tell you what the expenses are per unit. But normally 6 to 12 months, it depends on how quickly you can really turn out those units. If you've got a 30-unit property and you can turn 2 units a month, and you've got to turn all 30, at the end of the year it's turned, you're probably going to wait another 6 months to get that thing seasoned to flip it into a refi.
That makes sense. That's a great point. I love the tip as well. That's excellent. There's a question about what do you look for in a syndication attorney or accountant, but what's your criteria? You know, how did you find
syndication attorney? It's funny. We found her. She presented at our live event last year. I think she's awesome. I mean, she's done work for other gurus. She really knows her stuff. Don't cheap out on it. I'm going to be honest with you. She charges $15,000. It's not cheap. Yeah. It's not expensive. Some guys are in the 20s, but she really knows her stuff. She'll get on a call. She got on a call. She walked us through. I mean, it was baby steps for us because we had no idea. We didn't know how to structure it. I learned syndication through our podcast. So that's basically how I learned it, to be honest with you. So she really walked us through a lot. I mean, it was great. She walked us through a lot. And for us, it was awesome. So if anybody wants an introduction to her, just send me an email at gino@jakeandgino.com. I'll just put the two of you together, and you guys take it from there. But you'll thought she's really professional. She's done hundreds of these things. She sets up operating agreements. She does it all. So I would definitely, not my forte, not Jake's forte. We're not paper guys. So just leave it to the professionals, and you'll be happy. And anyway, your investors are going to pay for that. So it's going to be picked up by the investors. You got to put the money up front, but you're going to get compensated on the back end from your investors.
Gino, or no?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Go ahead, say that again.
No, I was going to say, yeah, we found our syndication attorney, 13,000 to your point, 15,000, 13,000.
Yeah.
A fund. And yeah, credible, sent us a whole bunch of PPMs that he had put together, private placement memorandums, to show the evidence of what he's done in the past. He's got some big clients that are nationally known and everything. So yeah,
that's
I
great.
agree with you.
That's excellent. Yes. Get referrals. That's exactly. Get a referral from somebody that they've done work with. Yes, I agree. Great point.
Looks like Dave wants to buy one of yours. So he's asking, what are you looking to sell and how many units is it?
We've got a housing assistance program. I'm not a big government guy. It's a HAP contract. It's a nightmare. It's 24 units. It's actually, the income's not bad, but when you deal with housing assistance, it's sort of part of HUD. we want to get rid of that. And there's another 16-unit property. It's just a little small property where we want to get rid of the 8 of those units and just pay the other 8 off. So I mean, they're at low caps, or 6.5 caps. They're for people who just want some stabilized cash coming in. There's a little value added on there, but it's appreciated tremendously. So that's what you're talking with the exit strategy. I'm always looking at return on equity, basically. So when you're looking at a return on equity, it's a different metric than looking at cash on cash, because we've built up so much equity in these properties and some of these that you're thinking, oh, I'm only making the money cash you invested, but all that additional equity that you've built up, if the market corrects or crashes, you lose that, right? So that's a scary thing. So you always got to keep that in consideration. Once you've cashed out, what equity's in there and how much of a return are you getting on that? So on this property, we bought it for $37,000 a unit. It's worth $70,000 a unit. It's only 16 units, but that's $30,000 a door. I mean, you're talking about a lot of money with a little debt on it. So there comes a point that everything's for sale at the right price, and if you can find the right buyer. So that's how you have to weigh it. Part of the exit strategy. We didn't go into it thinking that we're going to sell, but there comes a point where, you know, you're getting $3,000 a month in a monthly draw maybe, but you've got $700,000 or $600,000 in equity. It doesn't make sense. That return is not good. You're better off buying, selling that property. If you can 1031 it and buy a bigger deal with that, that's a smarter thing to do. Or else you just take the capital gains hit and you repurpose that into a bigger asset.
Excellent. Yeah. So we've only left you about 10 minutes for the last part of this, which is to talk about that first deal that you went through. So maybe you can give us the overview, the lessons you learned, kind of what's the property and what lessons you learned on that, if you could, and we'll get questions on it.
Yeah. We don't need a PowerPoint. That's great. I mean, the first deal that I learned was it took us 18 months to get our first deal. All right. You guys did a lot quicker than we did. And I don't know, this market is hotter now. This market's harder to find deals. For Jake and I, it was 2 Italians in Tennessee, and y'all ain't going to do business down here. And we were looking at the wrong deals. We weren't networking with brokers properly. I learned a lot on that first deal. The first thing I learned was you need to focus on the market and really learn your market. The next thing I learned is you need to build a team in that market. We were fortunate because we found something on LoopNet. It was priced at $750,000. We offered $600 ultimately, and we got the deal for $600. But we had an amazing broker relationship that we made, and it was awesome. And what we found with the broker was seller financing. He taught us about seller financing, and he actually pitched it to the sellers. So we were able to buy that first deal at $600. It came off a LoopNet. It was sitting on there for a couple of years. It was a motivated seller. It was your typical Jamie mom and pop that you guys have. That's how we came up with the thing. They were burned out. And the thing is, they put it on the market. They was on there too long. They just wanted to sell. And we weren't tough with them. We just said, this is what we can pay. And we probably paid $50,000 too much, but that's okay because now it's escalated. But it was a rough property, the first one. It was 25 units. It was cottages. It was duplexes. We had a 6-unit efficiency, and it was weekly renters. So we know the couple of value adds where weekly renters pay more, but it was just awful. The seller terms. So the seller terms were we had 10% down as a down payment from us and 10% owner financing. We had to come up with $83,000 with closing costs. So me and my brother and Jake split that a third each. It was a $600,000 purchase. So 10% is $60,000 plus. So the $60,000 note, we actually still have it because we've actually extended it. It was great. So the note, the original terms sucked. And I always teach my students, we got a 20-year AM, we got a 6% interest rate, and we got a 20-year AM, 6% interest rate, and a 5-year term. That was from the bank. And then from the seller, we got a 6% interest rate. We got a 7-year term, and we got a 25-year AM. We got better from the seller. The reason why we went with that bank was because the bank held a note, and they were just like, yeah, we'll do seller financing, but we didn't know. We didn't know to ask. We didn't know that everything in real estate and in life is negotiable. So that's what I tell my students. Don't get the 20-year AM from the bank. Push for the 25-year. Push for the year of interest only. Community banks will give you a year of IO. Why not ask for it? What's the worst thing that they can say? So then what happened, what ended up doing was we ended up refining that property 3 years ago. We got a 7-year term on it. We got a 4.25% interest rate. We were able to cash out $165,000 on the deal, and we're able to keep our payment the same because it went from 6% to 4.25%, and it went from a 20-year AM up to a 25-year AM. So the mortgage payment is the same. That's when you make a mistake. Sometimes mistakes are great, right? If we hadn't bought that first property, made that mistake, and learned from that mistake, because on our second deal we got even worse terms. 3 months after that, we got a 3-year term. And we got a 20-year AM. So that sucked even more. We refied out of that into community. And then ultimately that one we went to agency. But to start out with, a lot of learning mistakes. Don't go with weekly renters, because a weekly renter is a terrible tenant, although they pay more. There's a lot of turnover. So it took us about good 8 to 12 months to cycle all those tenants out. We actually had to do a lot of deferred maintenance. It was very management intensive. For our first deal, it was awesome. We learned a lot of value adds. They were paying for cable, they were paying for water and utilities, so their expenses were really bloated. We cut the expenses down. Income didn't go up that much, but by the time you save $1 of expenses, it goes to $1 net operating income. So we actually did really well at the property, and we still own it today. And that's one of those things. It's a small property. Should we sell it? I mean, it's still printing money. It's still printing $3,000 a month for us. It's not that much work. It's next to our other property, so it's not as management intensive. So it's part of an office. So that's why we keep it. If it was out in the woods, 35, 40 minutes away, we probably would sell it, but it's very close to the office, so it's very easy for us to manage.
So there's, you mentioned a lot of lessons from that first property, and there's a lot of people that are either on their first property or looking for their first property. What would be the top 2-3 things you would say, like, the top lesson, like, here's what you don't do, or here's what you do. You mentioned everything's negotiable, buy right, sell right. But what would you say is like the number one thing for that new buyer that's about to buy a property?
Wow. So the thing that sticks out to me was we didn't have a team built out. I said that already, but when we had the property, we barely had the inspector. I wish I had somebody who was a contractor who could have said to us, hey, you know what, guys? I'm not sure about these septic fields. Maybe we should put a little money into escrow, because 6 months later they failed. So it was in the wintertime, so we didn't even think about that. The due diligence process, we could have worked it out a little bit better, and we teach our students what the due diligence process is. It's daunting at first. In the very first property, we had an inspector and Jake and myself go out there. What the hell do we know in our first deal? We didn't even have a good contractor come out with us, because that broker was not working for us. On our second deal, all of a sudden we had more teams. We had a contractor come out with us. We had some problems with the foundation. We had some problems with some roofs and some structural stuff. It was easier because we had a team. So build a team out. And now today, on our due diligence process, we've evolved to the point that we have a CapEx crew go out with us. We have the inspector go out with us. We have our plumbing team go out with us. We have an HVAC go out with us. We scope the lines ourselves. So we've grown into that. You don't need to do that in your first or second deal. That will evolve. But really, when you work on it, try to get a really good inspector. Try to have him go into every single unit, and then really try to pull the trigger. Take action. You really got to take action. Don't be afraid. If you find something wrong in the report, take the pictures, go back, be fair. And we went back to her. She changed a couple of roofs, and she did a little bit of painting for us because we didn't have the guys. We're like, can you fix it for us? And she said, sure, because she was burned out. She was motivated. She just wanted to sell. So, build that team. I think that's one of the most important things.
Left here. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I chopped up a little bit on my end, but a couple minutes left. I want to get you to talk a little bit about like how can people get in touch with you, your website, all the things, and talk to a little bit about the academy that you put together, the Wheelbarrow Profits Academy.
Really simple. Just go on jakeandgino.com. We have the podcast Wheelbarrow Profits. We've got students doing deals, 1 or 2 or 3 a week. So what we're going to do is we're going to start creating a podcast called Movers and Shakers. And you guys are going to be on the podcast also, because we want to highlight all the students and everyone that their success. Because what I found is if you can create an environment that is conducive to people wanting to do business and sharing resources. Everyone thinks the pie is small. That scarcity mindset. I found that the pie is abundant, and there's so many deals out there. There's so much money out there. There's so many people that can partner and share. So to create that environment with Jake and Gino, I've done that. To be able to identify as a multifamily investor in a group is what's going to lead to a person's success ultimately. I didn't succeed until I said to myself, I'm taking the chef coat off, and I'm going to think of myself as an investor, as a multifamily investor. Once I did that, everything in my life changed. And I'm not making that up. That's the God's honest truth. It was just an epiphany for me, because I burned the ships. I'm not that guy anymore. I'm this guy now. So the Jake and Gino community allows that. I mean, there's a lot of people on there networking. You guys met on there. That's what I love more than anything else. When you can meet like-minded people and you can work together and you can share resources. Now, if somebody is investing in Chattanooga and they need a resource, they'll go on the private Facebook group, say, hey, any brokers out there? That's a big advantage. I mean, just by learning the education. And it's important. When you're doing your first or second deal, there's a lot of things that you don't know. And you know what? If you can shorten that learning curve and save that money, if I can put you in touch with our cost segregation specialist, he can save you 30 grand on a cost seg study, or I put you in touch with our insurance broker and he can cut down commissions for $2 grand a year on your deals. I mean, that's the power of the education, the environment. I mean, if you've been to the live event, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone needs to go to live events. Everyone needs to go out and see what's going on, meet the people, because it's not a really big arena, to be honest with you. You'll start seeing the same people at the same events. You'll start networking. You'll start getting out there. You'll be surrounded by people you like and people you want to do business with. It'll change your life. So network. That's my mantra.
It's funny, the guy coming up after you. So for those of you that are on this webinar, we have a nice double header. Phil Capron is going to do his normal Wednesday night call. It's usually deal discussion, but tonight he's got Jon Brickson from Old Capital Lending going to talk to you about financing and everything. So stay right here, and I'll get Phil up as a panelist. I'll figure all that stuff out, and John, and they can take it after we hang up with Gino here. But Phil and I were talking about that earlier today. It's such a small community. It feels like there's so much there, but I find myself when I join different groups, I got like 200 people in the group. I have 170 of them that are my friends and in Facebook, because we're all in this same community. It's so small. And your point about changing your life, I'll say this as we close out. Meeting you changed mine, because again, without you in the community, I wouldn't have met Ben. I wouldn't have had the ability to purchase the first property we did. We're under contract on another. And with the value that you bring beyond just entering this, like, yes, I'm in your community. I paid to be in that community, but then, you had me down in Jacksonville at your home. You're putting me on a podcast, which that would be fantastic. I'm honored if you decide to do that. I'll drag Ben out of his basement
I will do that. And that's important, right? It's important that people pay for their education, because when you pay for something, you value it. And it's not a payment. You're investing in yourself. And that's something that when you put into, and that's what I do with life coaching. I've done 2 different real estate coaching programs also. I credit that for my success also. So be willing to invest in yourself. It's all about shifting your mind, right? You're not paying for something. You're investing in your future. So it's important. The event that we have this year is in October 19th and 20th at the Gaylord Palms. You can go on our website. You'll see it, 2019 live event. It's a great place. I mean, it's not a pitch fest at all. This is really to get all the people out there, to show our vendors, to show our team's going to be out there. It's all about buy right, manage right, and finance right. So we're going to be teaching all about that. Guys, I can keep going on. So this has been a lot of fun. I just want to thank you for having me on. As you can tell, I can talk about real estate all day, because there's so many different facets of real estate. You don't only have to buy for yourself. You can create a business and do what you like ultimately. So don't think about, I don't have the money. The money's not the problem. It's really in here that's the problem, because the sky's the limit. You can start raising money. You can do no money down deals. There's so many different ways of getting into multifamily. So, but if you don't know, you don't know. So time to get educated, right?
No, man, yes, agreed completely. I agree with investing in your education. My life changed when I started to do that, and always thought, I'm not going to throw money at this stuff in the past. But man, between this and other things that I've done for myself, it's been transformational. And you were the beginning of that for me. So not to get too sappy with you here, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate tonight. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've created. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate all that you've poured into me and others in this academy. You are truly probably one of the most giving people I've ever met in my entire life. And look, man, you've made it. You don't need to do this stuff, right? You're financially free. You've got a beautiful family and plenty of things to do. And here you are. 9 o'clock at night on a Wednesday night, hanging out with me and these guys.
That's what financial freedom allows you to do. That's why I want everyone on this call to become financially free, because then they can ultimately start living their lives and loving what they do. If you want, get questions from all your participants. I will jump on another call in the next couple of months. We could do another webinar just on questions that they have. I'd love to do that for you. So if you want to do that,
that's great.
And let all the participants send in questions to you. We'll build something out in the next 3 months. We'll jump on something else. Okay.
That's a hell of an offer. I'll take you up on that. So everybody heard that. If anybody has questions, and I'll post in the Facebook groups as well, I'll get them all. And then, Gina, maybe we could set something up.
Got some great guys on here. Mike Constantis, Neil Shope, Jason Pearson. I got all the Jake Grant Warrington. I got a lot of Jake and Gino guys on here. So I love talking to my boys. May 16th, I'm going to be up in New York City. Mobile Home Park meetup. Everyone up there, come on up. May 16th, New York City. So make sure you're there. It's going to be a great time. So my last words of the night, Jamie and Benoit, I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks a lot. I really do appreciate it. It was great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Say hi to the family. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
I will. Thanks. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.
All right, everyone. I'm going to bring Phil Capron in here real quick. That was incredible, of course, to have Gino on tonight. Man, answered some incredible questions for us, and really got I don't know. For me, I'm buzzing right now. The guy brings so much value. And thanks to all of you for participating tonight. Phil, what'd you think, buddy? Is that pretty good?
That was so great. Can you hear me? It's been brought to my attention. My mic's a little messed up. So if I'm yelling
You're
at
a little quiet, but I can hear you.
Okay, I'll keep yelling. Yeah. You know, I love the concept of doing this. So thank you so much for including me in my group and, you know, in putting this all together. But it's a little weird. It's like a headliner just opened for the opening band. But anyway, we're going to go with this. So I'm not sure if you can get Jon on as you know, from the waiting room as well as a panelist. But Jon Brickson, Old Capital Lending, it's been a godsend to me in figuring out, you know, what I can and can't do with commercial financing. I really love what Gino said towards the end there is, you know, when they got started with that seller financing deal, that's the same way I got into the game. You know, to be very honest, nobody would have given me a loan for $1 million, but this 80-year-old dude, he wanted, you know, some monthly payments for his kids when he's not around anymore. And yeah, gave me a 30-year term, 6%, no credit check, really highly leveraged. You know, it didn't cash flow a ton, but it got me in the game. I did everything wrong with due diligence as well. Didn't bring an inspector out. They told me I didn't need to see all the units because they were fine. Yeah, right.
Gotta love it. Yeah. So Phil, real quick, before you get rolling, and I'm going to get out of your way here, why don't you introduce, you still got 32 people up here on the as attendees. Why don't you introduce yourself real quick, give us the 30-second bio and intro Jon, and then I'll get out of the way.
Okay, cool. So Phil Capron, based out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. I got into, you know, commercial multifamily real estate the same way everyone does, by being an ocean lifeguard, playing poker for a living, traveling around, playing drums for a punk rock band, and being in the special ops in the Navy. Those are all prereqs, right? No.
Absolutely, 100%.
Not so much. I got out of the military and didn't really have much to show for myself and got into the residential side, flipped a few dozen houses, and, you know, we've all read Rich Dad Poor Dad, or you should. If you haven't, go read it now. Hang up on me, go read it. You know, but there's a difference between rich and wealthy. And, you know, I like the idea of making these big checks on flips. But, you know, if you've got 6 or 8 or 10 of them going at a time, you're pulling your hair out. And what kind of lifestyle is that? I want to be wealthy. So in the last year, I've gone from 2 rentals that I've had for about 10 years to a little bit over 200 with another 20 under contract and another 170 in negotiation. So, you know, very shortly, I hope to follow in the footsteps of Jake and Gino and, you know, be hanging out on the beach in Florida with my family, with my friends, doing what I want, when I want, with who I want, because that's the goal, guys. That's the dream. And multifamily real estate can get you there. But if you don't have a great team member like Jon is to me to help you out on the lending side, you know, great attorney, contractor, property manager, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. So that's a little bit about me. Can
you see Jon right now, Phil? You asked about. Can you see him?
You flashed on. Jon, can you say something to make sure that you're
hey.
With you?
Can you hear me?
We got you, brother.
All
Good.
right.
Can you guys see the chat? I want to make sure you can see any questions that pop in.
Yeah, I got the chat. Skylar's still on. Katie. Yeah, look at every unit, right? It was hard-won advice, I'll tell you. But at least I did it on the cheap. It was a 13 unit. It wasn't a 100 unit or something like that. And I paid for it, but it's tuition. And like Gino said, it's okay to pay for education. It's a lot better to pay for someone else's mistakes than pay for your own. Ask me how I know. So Joe, what's up, brother? Skylar, Benoit, awesome. Yeah. So
I'm going to move out of the way. I'm going to mute
Jon.
There you go. I'm going to mute myself out, get out of the way completely, so you guys can do your thing. And I'm going to probably be listening back here, but I don't want to. You guys are better looking than me, so I'll get out of the way. I've had my time on TV tonight, but thank you guys both for doing this. And I think it's a huge win to come on with Gino. I think Gino's a headliner, so are you, right? But this is I think equally valuable. There's a lot of great tactical stuff people are going to get out of this. So I'll let you guys get rolling and enjoy.
Look, if a couple people can take action and overcome their fears and get with Jon or get with another great lender, and get off the freaking sidelines, put in that LOI, put a property under contract, and get rolling, our time will have been really well spent here. So happy to
100%.
do it. Happy to be here. Thanks again, Jamie. So John,
Absolutely.
what's up?
All right, what's going on? You can hear me all right, right?
We got you loud and clear, brother. We've already got
Cool.
comments rolling in asking how to get a hold of you. I presume we're going to put that info out, and then I'll type it into the chat when it's up
Yes,
on
sir.
Word.
Yeah.
Okay. Without any further ado, Mr.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started here. So let's see. So I got my share screen up. Let me see here. All right. All right, there we go. All right, what's going on, everybody? So thanks for joining this evening. And Phil, thanks for having me on. My name is Jon Brickson, and I'm a national multifamily lender with Old Capital Lending in Dallas, Texas. And tonight I'm going to be discussing some of the most common sources for multifamily financing for multifamily investors. And I'm going to go into greater detail about the Freddie Mac small balance program, which I think is one of the best financing sources in the market. And I especially think that's true for new or inexperienced multifamily investors. So I'd like this presentation to be as interactive as possible. I'm actually not holding Q&A until the end of the presentation. I mean, we will have Q&A at the end of the presentation, but you know, Phil, if anybody has questions, feel free to pop in, interrupt me. I'm sure people will have questions throughout the presentation, so don't want to wait until the end. Just type your questions into the chat box throughout the presentation, and Phil will relay those over to me. And I've got my phone number, and then also I have my email here at the end of the presentation, but if you want to shoot me a text or send me an email, I can send you these presentation slides, and then also some additional information that we have on multifamily financing and investing. So going through the agenda, first we'll just cover different loans available for multifamily properties, and then I'll dive into Freddie SBL. We'll wrap it up with some more information about our group, Old Capital, how you can work with us, how you can connect with us, and then finally next steps into getting started into multifamily and kind of the next steps you should take to best position yourself to be qualified and to build your team, so to speak, on the financing side. So first, some background on me. So I'm a nationwide lender. I've had closings in Washington, Kansas, Texas, Virginia, shout out to Phil, Minnesota and Florida in the past 12 months. So definitely have a focus in DFW and the Texas markets and the Midwest, but work from coast to coast. I was born in Kansas City, born and raised in Kansas City, but based in Dallas, Fort Worth. Graduated from DePaul University in Indiana with a degree in economics. And I have 7 years of experience in commercial real estate financing and investing. But over the course of my career, I've been involved with origination and underwriting over $1 billion in commercial real estate loans across all property types. I've chosen to focus on B and C multifamily as, to me, that's where I've seen investors really have the best returns over time, and then also, you know, the lowest losses during a downturn. So that's my favorite property type over hotels, over self-storage, mobile home parks, independent living, all those things, great property types, absolutely. But to me, multifamily is the best. So jumping into the presentation here, so just covering different loan types available for multifamily. So there's a number of different sources available for multifamily. You know, there's bank loans, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, CMBS lenders. There's non-recourse debt funds that do bridge loans, life insurance companies. Plenty of different sources. And, like equity investors, lenders have recognized that multifamily is the best asset class out there, had the lowest default rate among different property types during the downturn. And there's a number, as I mentioned, of different lending sources available for multifamily. But for now, I'm going to provide a high-level overview on the three most common, which are banks, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac. So just getting started with bank loans. So bank loans, for the most part, are going to be recourse loans, meaning that a personal guarantee will be required with a bank loan, whereas Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will be non-recourse loans, basically meaning that you are not signing a personal repayment guarantee for a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan. So worst case scenario, property goes back to the bank, because the bank forecloses on the property. If you do a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, you can just do a deed in lieu foreclosure, go your separate ways. With a bank, if you sign a personal guarantee, the bank will foreclose on your property, they can sell it, and then if the bank is still out of the money, they can come after the guarantor, which typically is going to be you or the borrower, for that difference. Other key difference is banks tend to be shorter term loans, so usually they're 3 to 5 years in term. Fannie Mae can go 5 to 30 years in term, and then Freddie SBL, they can do 5, 7, or 10 years term. Amortization, banks 20 to 25 year, Freddie SBL, it's 30-year AM, and then a lot of times they can offer 3 to 5 years of interest only. Max LTV, banks typically are topping out at 75%. I have heard of banks going higher, going up to 80%. I wouldn't say it's all that common. I know Phil was talking to a bank earlier this year that was willing to go up to 80%, but for the most part, they're capped at 75%. Fannie Mae will go to 80% on a purchase and then 75% on a refi. And then Freddie SBL, they'll go to 80% on a purchase and a refi in top and standard markets. In smaller markets, they'll be topping out at 75%. So property occupancy. So bank loans are the best for transitional properties or value add properties. So if you're buying a property if you're buying a property and it has less than 80% or less than 85% occupancy, and if there's a significant amount of bad debt, tenants aren't paying rent, maybe it's a mom and pop operator that doesn't keep financial records, maybe it's all of the above. But in those cases, banks oftentimes are your best source, or a bridge loan, a non-recourse bridge loan could be a good source as well. But so typically for banks, those are, if you're doing a true value add property with a significant upside in the cash flows, banks can be a good source. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they lend on stabilized properties. So stabilized would be defined as 90% occupancy for the past 90 days. And so, you can finance, and I've worked with a number of investors that have done this, and Jake and Gino, who were just on, or Gino, who's just on, I know has done this. But you can finance a value add property with a bank loan. And then once you increase the cash flow, increase the value, you can do a cash out refi with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. So as long as the property is stabilized and there's not a huge amount of upside in cash flows, a lot of times Fannie Mae and Freddie will be your best source. So rehab budget. So banks can include the rehab budget in the loan. So for instance, if you're buying, let's say $1 million property, purchase price is $1 million. If your budgeted rehab is $100,000, the bank might be willing to finance you at 75% of purchase price, or $750,000 plus 75% of your budgeted rehab. So 75,000. So you're really getting 75% of cost. So banks can finance rehab. Fannie Mae can finance rehab. They'll go up to 80% of purchase price plus 80% of budgeted rehab, so long as the property covers the debt service at a 1.25 times ratio. And I'll go more into what a debt service coverage ratio is here in the next slide. but Fannie will go up to 80%. They will finance part of the rehab, but the property has to be generating enough cash flow on the in-place income to be able to support that high of a loan amount. And in the current market with cap rates where they are, we're not seeing too many deals at 80% of cost, but we've certainly done a number of 80% LTC deals in the past. So always an option with Fannie. Freddie, SBL, they do not have rehab included in the loan, so they will just finance just based on the purchase price. So they'll go to 80% of purchase. They may be able to roll in up to 3% closing costs, but for the most part, they're just financing based on the purchase price. So prepayment, this is important, and this is another reason why banks are good for value add type deals, is because banks, their prepayment penalty is typically either limited or no prepayment penalty. So what's nice about that is if you finance your property with a bank loan, you increase the cash flow, increase the value, and if you want to do a cash out refi after 12 to 24 months, or you want to sell the property, you can pay off your loan with no prepayment penalty. The most common prepayment penalty with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans is what's called yield maintenance. And yield maintenance is the most expensive prepayment penalty out there. So, positives on Fannie and Freddie is you get the long-term fixed rate loan, you go up to 80%, you get 30-year amortization, a few years of interest only. The negative thing on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans is yield maintenance. And so basically what yield maintenance does is it guarantees the bank that they will receive interest payments as if you're holding the loan to maturity. So for instance, if you do a 10-year Fannie Mae loan with yield maintenance, and if you want to pay off the loan in year 5, you'll need to pay the remaining 5 years of interest payments at the time of prepay. It's not exactly equal to the 5 main interest payments because it's the net present value of all remaining interest payments on the loan. But the key thing is that a yield maintenance prepay penalty can be pretty expensive. There's ways you can work with a yield maintenance loan if you're selling the property or if you want to pull some cash out. And I'm happy to go into detail about that. But just something to watch out for and something to know what you're getting into when you decide to finance your acquisition with a yield maintenance loan. So what's nice about Freddie Mac and their program is they can offer what's called step down prepay. And so they have yield maintenance and they offer better interest rates on loans that have yield maintenance. But they also offer what's called step down prepay. So you could do a 5, 7, or 10-year loan. For instance, you could do a 5-year loan with a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 step down prepay where your prepayment is 5% in year 1, 4% in year 2, 3% in year 3. So pretty straightforward, pretty easy to understand. You know exactly where your prepayment's going to be and when. So that's another reason why I like Freddie SBL loans for newer investors. And then the last reason why Freddie is great for newer investors is bank loans. They will finance new investors, but banks are oftentimes they're underwriting the personal guarantee on the loan. And so they're underwriting the personal financials of whoever's signing that guarantee. So they will finance new investors, but they're just looking for strong net worth and liquidity relative to the loan amount. Fannie Mae, they want at least one of the key principals. So at least one of the partners that is signing on the loan to have multifamily experience. And by multifamily experience, I mean experience owning, investing in, and managing a 5+ unit multifamily property. It's somewhat of a gray area on how they define experience and how much of experience is enough. But at the minimum, it's someone that has basically acted as a managing member on a multifamily property, and by multifamily, 5 units and up is how they defined it. So a duplex, 3-plex, 4-plex would not be included in that experience definition. So Freddie SPL, one way they're different is they will finance both experienced and new investors. And so they're certainly more lenient on the experience requirement. Their most important thing is they want to know who are you working with on third-party property management. So they want to make sure that you have a qualified third-party manager that has experience in the market, and they don't want to lend to a first-time investor that is self-managing a property in Georgia and the investor is based in California. So we've worked with a number of new investors who are doing their first multifamily property and have done a lot of loans with those investors through the Freddie SPL program. So with that being said, Phil, any questions for me as I continue through this?
Hey, John. Yeah, a couple of good ones. I was just typing back one of them, but I'll let you take it. Is it possible to refinance a bank loan into another 3 to 5 year loan after the term is up? And what I was going to say is absolutely. But the holy grail for our business is to be in non-recourse debt. What that means is if the world explodes and we can't make our payments, we can hand the keys back to the bank. And that's the end of it unless somebody in the partnership has committed fraud. Anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. You can definitely refi your existing bank loan with another bank loan. The only reason I would think someone would do that is if they are thinking they want to sell the property in the next year, 2 years, 3 years.
To avoid the prepayment.
Yeah, just they want the better prepayment. And if that's really what your hot button is, you can structure pretty flexible prepayment with Freddie Mac small balance. For instance, you can do what's called a 3-1 open prepay. So you can do a 5-year loan with a 3% prepay in year 1, 1% in year 2, and then it's open with no prepay after year 2. So that's an option as well.
That's the thing. Everything is negotiable, guys, in this business in general, but particularly with lenders. If you don't have someone awesome on your side who does a lot of these things and knows what's possible, the bank's going to try to give you 65% loan to cost, 70%. There's better options out there, but if you don't have someone working on your behalf, then you're going to miss that. And if we have time after your presentation, John, I was thinking we'd run through the Norfolk deal and we'd play around with some of these variables and show everyone what a big impact some of these things that we're going over right now can make, whether it's interest rate, leverage, interest only, just to see how those levers really make or break a deal potentially.
Sure.
Let's see what other questions we got. We got one about portfolios on smaller stuff. I thought you got to that later in the presentation.
I actually don't touch on that too much later in the presentation, but can talk about it briefly. So Freddie Mac has what's called a scattered site loan, and a scattered site loan, if you have a handful of small multifamily properties, meaning like 5 units and above. So let's say you have a 10 unit, and a 10 unit and an 8 unit and a 12 unit all in one area and all on their own. Minimum loan size for Freddie Mac small balance is 1 million. So maybe on their own, they don't qualify or they're not large enough for a Freddie loan. We have the scattered site program where you can finance multiple properties that they need to be within a 3-mile radius, but you can finance multiple properties under their scattered site program. And the terms are not quite as strong as kind of the traditional or conventional Freddie program. They'll go to 75% LTV. The rates are a little bit higher than what they would normally offer, but there are some options. And then for single family portfolios, there's a number of different private lenders out there that specialize on doing 5 or 10 year fixed rate loans, non-recourse up to 75%. They are private lenders. They're not government agencies like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They don't have that government guarantee with them. So the interest rates are definitely not as attractive as Fannie or Freddie. But, they can work out pretty well. Some of these groups have been pretty active. And then the other option on portfolio financing is, local banks will finance portfolios of single family or small multifamily, all day, and actually can offer some pretty good terms on that as well.
Because at that point, it's relationship based. It's asset based too, but they're somebody you're already banking with, they know you as a person too.
Sure.
Cool. So Joe, maybe you want to reach out to Jon privately about your situation. But it sounds like maybe it's not a Freddie solution, maybe a smaller bank. Chris, my buddy, is a property manager in Philadelphia, has been for about 10 years and manages, a handful of small multis, 10 plexes, so like 30 plexes. If memory serves, one of the agencies will accept that as experience, one won't. Did I remember correct, or?
Yeah, I mean, he could definitely qualify for Freddie small balance. And then, for Fannie, he on his own would not qualify. But if he brings in a partner that has multifamily experience, so, maybe if it's one of his clients that he works with as a property manager, if they'd be willing to sign with him on a deal, then you could qualify for Fannie that way. But yeah, I mean, 10 to 30 unit deals in Philadelphia, those are great. Freddie small balance is kind of built for that type of product. So the good news is he could qualify for Freddie on his own. Fannie Mae, it's, bring in a partner that has experience owning.
Hey, Chris, I know a friend of yours that has a couple of units. Just saying. Shameless self-promotion. So you mentioned briefly, here's a question from me, that you're not seeing a lot of 80% leverage based on where we are in the market. Can you speak a little bit more to that? I'm assuming you're saying that the deals folks are bringing to you, they're not going to hit the cover required to leverage that hard. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah.
Other reasons?
Yeah. No, that's right. So let me see what I have on this next slide. We can start talking about DSCR requirements or debt service coverage ratio requirements. So I'll just kind of skip to this and I'll go back to the other slide. But basically, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, their loans are constrained at typically a 125 debt service coverage ratio. So what a debt service coverage ratio is that's the net operating income. So that's the cash flow the property is generating divided by the annual debt service or the annual principal and interest. And the net operating income or the cash flow that the lender underwrites is based on what's in place. So I'll just write this out. It's NOI divided by, I'll just write DS, debt service. And so the NOI is based on the cash flow that's in place on the property. So it's based on the what's called the net rental income over the past 3 months. And then annualized other income is based on the other income the property generated over the past 12 months. And then expenses, for the most part, it's a combination of trailing 12 financials, or if it's an acquisition, they'll look at market expenses. And so basically what this means and why in the current market it's hard to get to 80% is Fannie and Freddie, they'll lend up to 80, but the property needs to generate enough cash flow to be able to cover that 80% loan at a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio. So because cap rates are tighter, and in some markets cap rates are below 6%, in a market like Central Florida or Atlanta, or DC, especially cap rates there are going to be below 6%, below 5%, below 4%. So the properties aren't generating a lot of in-place cash flow, and because they're only generating a small amount of in-place cash flow, the loan's going to be constrained at a 60% or 65% LTV, just because there's not enough cash flow to cover at a 1.25. If that makes sense.
Yep. Fantastic explanation. So is everyone tracking on what we're talking about here? Pretty sophisticated group, but I know we've got, some folks that are trying to get in the game as well. Skylar says, yep. Jason asked if we could do an example, and Jason, respectfully, if we could let Jon roll through the rest of his slides, I think we're going to be good on time. So we can definitely do a Q&A, and we can do the deal that Jon and I are actively working. I went through the spreadsheet and kind of changed some variables, and we can show the impact of exactly what we're talking about here for a real live example, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, it's cool with me.
Okay. All right. Moving on.
So why Freddie SBL? So like Fannie Mae, Freddie can offer long-term non-recourse fixed rate loans with 30-year amortization. But unlike Fannie Mae, Freddie can offer flexible declining prepayment options. With Freddie Mac loans, you can actually lock your interest rate at loan application. So basically with Freddie Mac loans, as soon as the loan application is signed, the interest rate is locked. And the reason why that's important is, we've been talking about that 1.25 times DSCR and, being constrained at a 125. And, to calculate your debt service, it's based on the debt service calculation, or your annual principal and interest calculation is based on your principal payment and your interest payment. And so if the interest rate increases, your debt service increases, and then your DSCR would decline. And so with Fannie Mae loans, the interest rate's not locked until 45 days into the closing process. And so what can happen is you can sign the loan application, do all of your diligence, send the loan off to get approved by Fannie Mae, and then the 10-year treasury, if it increases from 2.7% to 2.9%, your interest rate may increase during that period of time. And so your debt service, or your principal and interest, will increase. And then that will mean that your DSCR will fall below that 125. And so the lender will resize a loan to get you back to a 125 DSCR just because interest rates have increased. And so that's always part of a risk with a Fannie Mae loan. We always work to mitigate that risk as lenders, but that's not a risk with Freddie Mac loans, as the rate is locked in on day one. And then other key difference, as we've mentioned, Freddie is a lot more lenient on financing newer or first-time investors. So just giving kind of a high-level overview of the Freddie Small Balance Program. Loans range from $1 million to $6 million. They can go up to $7.5 million in top and standard markets, and I'll cover what a top and standard market is in the next slide. They'll go up to 80% LTV and down to a 1.20 times debt service coverage ratio, non-recourse, 30-year AM, interest only is available, competitive pricing. We talked about the interest rate lock, and then you also have the points-based or step-down prepay available as well. Any other questions, Phil?
A selfish one. So when we're doing when we negotiate an interest-only period,
yeah,
we're looking at the in-place cash flow versus the IO, right? Or are they underwriting the full amortized?
The 125, the debt service coverage ratio, the DSCR test, is based on the amortizing payment.
Ooh, okay. So interesting. All right, we'll have some fun with playing with the spreadsheet in a minute then.
Right. So Freddie Mac looks at real estate, the same way investors will. It's all about location. So they have what they call top markets, standard, small, and very small markets. So in top markets, they'll offer the highest leverage. So they'll go to 80% LTV, and then they'll go down to a 1.20 times debt service coverage ratio. And then in what they call very small markets, they're capped at a 75% LTV on purchase, 70% on a refi, and then they go to a 140 debt service coverage ratio. And then the interest rates are the lowest in top markets, and they're the highest in the very small markets. And so top markets are going to be obviously like New York, LA, Chicago, DC, San Francisco, but then also some smaller markets are top markets. So like Minneapolis and Dallas and Stamford, Connecticut, those are top markets. Standard markets are going to be your larger MSAs that are not included. And so really, I always kind of think of it as like the markets that have a pro sports team, are going to be a standard market. And then small markets, your next level down. I guess I missed that. Green Bay has the Packers, but they are probably the only pro franchise market that is below standard. So Green Bay, places like Montgomery, Alabama, Asheville, North Carolina, Reno, Nevada, Abilene, Texas. I closed a loan in Abilene just a month ago. Those are all small markets, and then very small markets is going to be kind of your next level down. So they'll go. Freddie will lend in just about any market in the country. They'll even go to very small towns of 10,000 people, but they'll be constrained at these small market parameters. All right, so keeping it moving here. There we go. So talking about qualifying for a Freddie small balance loan. So, and a lot of this applies to Fannie as well, but there's kind of three key things. Number one, property needs to be stabilized, so 90% occupancy. Second thing is a loan size. So the minimum loan size is $1 million. The maximum loan size is $7.5 million. And so I always tell newer investors or first-time investors that are looking to get into multifamily, you want to target properties that are either already worth 1.5 million, 1.3 to 1.5 million, because a property of that size is large enough to qualify for a Freddie small balance loan, or you want to target properties that could potentially down the road be worth 1.3 to 1.5 million, because you can always finance a property with a bank loan, and then if you increase the value, then you can do a nice cash out refi with the Freddie small balance loan. And I'll run through kind of a similar situation in a case study here towards the end. But I say, target other properties that are already worth 1.5 or could be on a path to being 1.5, because you can buy a 6 unit or a 10 unit that's worth, you pay $500,000 and maybe you increase the value to $800,000, and that's great. And you might be able to do a cash out refi with the bank, but you'll still be left with 20 to 25 year amortization. You'll have a personal guarantee. The terms just aren't going to be quite as attractive. And then the last key requirement with Fannie and Freddie is the lender requires that you have a net worth, you and the key principals that sign with you on the loan have a net worth equal to 100% of the loan amount, and then liquidity equal to 9 months of principal and interest. And 9 months of principal and interest, that really equates to about 5% of the loan amount in the current market. So the rule of thumb I always use is 100% and 10%. So net worth equal to 100% of the loan amount, and then liquidity equal to 10%. Sorry, net worth 100% of the loan amount, liquidity equal to 10% of the loan amount. So for instance, if you're buying a $5 million property, and if you want to finance that acquisition with an 80% Freddie SBL loan or a $4 million loan, Freddie will want you and your partners to have a combined net worth equal to $4 million, and then combined liquidity equal to $400,000. So before I move on, any questions out there, Phil?
You just answered it.
Okay.
Is Detroit a standard market? I said most likely.
Yeah, I think Detroit would be a standard market.
Sweet. And guys, the deal that we're working on right now, it was right on that cusp of getting over $1 million loan amount. What happens if it's not quite $1 million? Didn't you say you could pay a higher interest rate?
Yeah. They'll actually, Freddie and Fannie will go to 750,000. But for those smaller loans, I just think, once you get into that territory, a bank starts to make more sense, just because your closing costs are lower with the bank. The closing process is a little bit easier, and you're close enough where if you increase the value of that property by, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in the next few years, at that point, it'll be, well within the range to qualify for Fannie or Freddie. And at that point, you can do, solid cash out refi.
Nice. Yep, that's all we got. Questions right now.
Okay. So keeping it moving here. So if I hand you a 100-unit property for $5 million, how would you finance it? Could you close it, number one? So follow-up questions would be, how would you finance it? So would you go with Fannie or Freddie or a bank loan? What kind of loan could you qualify for? So that comes down to what's the current occupancy? Who are your key principals? Who's signing on a loan with you? What's that combined net worth and liquidity look like? Who are you using for third-party management? And then kind of taking these things into consideration, who you need to add to your sponsorship team. Because, as we've been talking about, I caught the end of the Gino webinar earlier tonight when I joined, and I thought, he was 100% right at the end, and that this is not something that you can go at alone. This is definitely a team sport. And even if you are, a high net worth person and you've got, $1 million in cash in the bank and, a strong net worth, you still need to have, a good property management company, a good lender to work with, good attorneys. Maybe you do bring in a partner who does have some experience. And so I'll always be thinking about, okay, if I can't meet one of these criteria, what am I missing here? And then who can I potentially partner with or add to my team to help me get there?
Love it. And guys, I think that's really good homework for you. If you haven't done a deal yet or haven't done a big deal yet, figure it out. Imagine a 100-unit property, $5 million landed in your lap. And if most markets, that'd probably be a decent deal. 50 a door. What are you going to do? What are you gonna do? And if you don't have those answers, I know how to answer all those questions right now because I've done it. If you can't, might want to do some digging.
Yeah, I would just say is, what you would need is, number one, and if you're doing a $4 million loan, you need you and your key principals need a combined net worth of $4 million, combined liquidity equal to $400,000, and then if you're buying a $5 million deal, $4 million loan, you need to raise $1 million in equity. So are you going to syndicate? If so, do you have a group of investors that you can call, that you can, solicit equity, from and market to in an SEC compliant way? And if you are going to syndicate, that brings up another point. You need, a good attorney. You need a securities attorney. You need an attorney to help you draft your purchase and sale agreement, and then also a property management company. So just some things to think about, as you're kind of building your team and getting prepared to submit offers and to be able to take down a multifamily property. So running through the acquisition timeline and how that all kind of runs with doing the financing. So I'm going to run through from day one when you actually, get a listing in your email, or you find it off market and, you start looking at a property, or you find it on LoopNet, or however you might find a property, starting from that first moment all the way up until the closing on the acquisition. I'm going to run through that timeline real quick here. So day one, potential acquisition identified. And let's say this is a property that you look at and you think, okay, this seems really interesting. I think it might be a fit for me. I'm going to start underwriting it and, looking to see if it's an interesting deal. At that point, I would say that it makes sense to reach out to me or any lender that you work with for financing terms, and just say, hey, I'm looking at this property. I think I'm interested. Get their thoughts, their feedback on how it might be financed. Me personally, I can certainly get you some high level loan terms. And I think it's important to reach out to the lender first because, the loan can make or break your deal. You might underwrite a property and assume 75% LTV and a 4.25% interest rate, only to get your offer accepted, maybe even get the property under contract, and then reach out to your lender. And at that point, find out, oh, wait, this property only qualifies for 65% LTV and a 5% interest rate. And now it's a much different deal. You might have flown across the country to see the property. You might have started talking to investors and, maybe even put up some non-refundable earnest money. So I would say that you want to know what your financing looks like early in the process. So definitely reach out, very early on, even before you submit a letter of intent on the deal. So once you've contacted me or any other lender you're working with for financing terms, you can then underwrite the property utilizing the financing terms that I've provided. You can then submit a term sheet with your LOI, which will show the listing broker that you at least have your financing lined up or have an idea of how you want to finance the property. This will improve your credibility, but then also, you'll have a plan going into it. So once that LOI is accepted and you're ready to move forward, you can request a loan application from the lender, which is a kind of a more formal package that has all the different information on the loan, and then also there's the loan application fee, which is due once that application's signed. And so then once once you've had the accepted LOI, the PSA has been negotiated, and you sign the PSA, you can then, once it's signed, you want to sign the PSA the same day the application is signed. And then at that point, you're kicking off the loan underwriting. And these loans typically take 45 to 60 days to close. And so most PSAs, typically a contract is going to be 60 days with a 30-day extension option or two 15-day extension options. So you want to be in a position where you have a signed loan application as soon as you're under contract so that you can close a loan in time to meet your contract deadlines. So, and then the closing timeline. So once you are under application and under contract, so day one, you sign the loan application, you wire the expense deposit. Day two, the third-party reports are ordered. So that's the appraisal, the property condition assessment, and the phase one environmental. The due diligence checklist is provided, and then the inspection dates are arranged. So between days 2 and 21, so by day 21, all the due diligence items have been provided to the lender. The third-party reports have been have been completed. And then at that point, the lender is going to work on submitting or completing their underwriting package that they're going to submit to Freddie Mac for approval. So day 28, they'll submit their package to Freddie Mac. It's typically about a 10 business day turnaround for Freddie Mac to provide their approval or their commitment. So day 38, the commitment's received, the letter's received. Freddie Mac says, we're ready to move forward with the loan. At that point, you can go ahead and do the formal rate lock. And then over the next 5 to 7 business days, legal and title will be finalized, settlement statement will be prepared, and then day 45 to 60, the loan will be closed. So I'll pause there, Phil, if anything else.
You make it sound so simple.
Yeah.
And I guess when your lender knows what's going on, maybe it can be. But
well, yeah, we certainly try to make it as simple as possible and as smooth as possible, but sometimes there's just things that are out of your control. And I'll go through a case study here on a loan that was in your backyard later on. That was actually an 8-month closing. So
wow, yeah,
it was really day 1 and then day 260. So a number of things happened. But yeah, just rolling through the case studies. So this was a down the fairway. This probably was a 50-day close. This was a first-time investor that was buying a 48-unit property in Houston, stabilized property, limited deferred maintenance. They were wanting to hold the property for, you know, a 5 or 10 year term. Also a new investor. So we just did a 10-year loan, 3 years of interest only. We did yield maintenance prepay because I got them the best rate and they were okay with holding long term. But point being, Freddie can finance, it can be a good option for newer investors that are buying. I guess, you know, if you would call this a turnkey property, I'd say this would be a turnkey type situation. Second case study. So as I mentioned, some properties will be too small for Freddie or Fannie on the acquisition, and you can always just finance it with a bank loan. And then if there's a path to getting the property to being worth 1.5 million, you can do a cash out refi with Freddie or Freddie small balance or with Fannie. So this particular deal, borrower purchased it for $1 million in July of 17. They spent $200,000 on doing a total gut renovation on all these townhome units. They were all 3-bedroom, 2-bath. They did a really nice job. Finished the rehab in July of 2018. They leased the units up right away. And then once that last lease was signed and before even the last tenants had actually moved in, we had the loan under application. And in November of 2018, so 15 months after they bought it, we did a loan of 1.38 million and their total cost was 1.2 million. So we did a cash out refi at 115% of their cost basis after 15 months of ownership. So definitely a home run for this borrower. And it can work out really well for these types of situations where there's significant upside in the cash flow. If you can buy it at an attractive basis, you can finance it with a bank loan, with a credit union loan, or, you know, maybe even a hard money loan or seller financing, you know, whatever your source of funds is, and then turn around and do a pretty nice cash out refi once you've executed. So case study number 3, this was an investor that I worked with. I helped them find this deal, but they were an investor that was based out of state. They weren't local to this market. They were based in New Orleans, and they brought this 32-unit property. We did a Freddie small balance loan on this. It was a 7-year loan with 2 years of interest only and the step down prepay. And as I mentioned, for newer investors on some of these smaller properties, and I don't know if anyone listens to the Old Capital podcast, but I'll steal this line from Michael Becker. But, you know, on these smaller properties, a lot of people will buy a 20-unit or a 30-unit property, and then 2 or 3 years down the road, they'll decide either I want to move on to something larger and buy larger properties, or they'll say, you know, screw multifamily. I'm done being a landlord. I just want to be a passive investor. I want to get rid of this thing. And so I always have investors buy, or I always recommend they finance with step down prepay, even though the rate's not quite as attractive as it is with yield maintenance. And so on this property, it was their first property in DFW. So I told the investor, you know, look, you're just getting into this market. You know, rather than do a yield maintenance, do a step down. You'll be glad in year 3 or 4 when your prepayment penalty is 3% and you're not stuck with some yield maintenance prepayment penalty where you have to have a huge penalty to pay it off. So pretty clean Freddie SBL deal. Moving on to a not so clean Freddie SBL deal, and certainly no knock on Newport News, Virginia, or Virginia Beach.
There's plenty of reasons to.
Well, look at this. I mean, it's right in the water, which was good and bad. Good for the views, not great for insurance. But this was a property. It was a first-time investor. This was the very first deal they were buying. We were doing a Freddie Mac small balance loan to finance the acquisition. And this property ran into a lot of different issues kind of out of the gate. You know, primarily there was a big environmental issue on the property. So the property was built in 1931, and there was a number of underground storage tanks on the property. And so they actually had to put the underwriting completely on hold for about 3 months, go in, cap all the tanks. They spent about $40,000 doing that. So that was completed. We had to order a new appraisal, a new environmental, new phase one at that point because everything had expired. So that delayed closing. And then towards the end, once we were just about ready to submit to Freddie for approval, we found out that the property had galvanized piping, which had a big impact on insurance. And so that opened up let's find a insurance premium that's not super, super high. But point being is that, we worked hand in hand with this borrower, stuck with them throughout the process. It was not an easy deal to do. It was not a large loan for us. I probably made minimum wage on this deal on the hours that worked, but it was great to get it done. And these guys were determined because they were buying this deal at a very attractive basis, even for Newport News, even for the age of the property. So they're going to do really well with it, and they're doing a 7-year loan with a step down prepay because their thoughts are that they can increase the NOI here significantly, and then do a large cash out refi here in the next 3 or 4 years. So that being said, I'll wrap it up here. Just some more background on Old Capital Lending. So we're based in Dallas, Fort Worth, and we are a mortgage broker, but we focus primarily on B and C multifamily in the $1 to $20 million range. It's really all that we do. It's our specialty. We closed over $1 billion in loans in 2018. For those of you who don't know about our podcast, definitely recommend you check it out. It's called the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. It's been around for about 4 or 5 years now. We've grown a huge listener base. We have about 40,000 downloads per episode, and it's hosted by my boss and the head of Old Capital, Paul Peebles, and then the co-host is Michael Becker, who was formerly a loan officer with Old Capital, but recently, I guess 2012 or 13, went into syndication and has been buying his own deals in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin during this cycle, and has close to 7,000 units under management now. So really, they're just talking purely about multifamily, B and C multifamily. So that's really all it is. And a lot of people really enjoy the podcast. We put out 2 podcasts per week. So definitely check that out. And then obviously we have our Facebook page, and then you can go to oldcapitalpodcast.com for more information on what we do. So top 5 reasons to work with us: execution certainty and proven track record. Obviously we are a mortgage broker, so, best loan terms and rate. I talked about Fannie Mae, Freddie, and banks tonight, but we also work with non-recourse bridge lenders, local banks, regional banks, private lenders, etc. We save you time. And so, you don't get forever on your sales contract. And so you don't want to be in a position where you're looking for a loan yourself and you're running around to different lenders. And then finally, it's day 30 in the contract and you still don't have your loan. You want to make sure you have someone that's keeping it on track. We're an experienced team of former underwriters. So Paul, James, Ang, and myself are all former lenders ourselves. And so we know, exactly what the bank needs, when they need it, and why they need it. And then last but not least, we will put you into business. So, we certainly welcome first-time investors. A lot of our largest clients that we work with, we did the first loan for them on the first multifamily they ever bought. And now they have, over 1,000 units, over 2,000, over 3,000 units. So we're happy to work with new investors and educate them on how this crazy world of multifamily all works, or at least try to. We can always show you so much, but the way you really learn is by getting out there and doing it, certainly. So next steps, number 1, get educated, subscribe to the Old Capital Podcast on iTunes, like our Facebook page, and then you can request a copy of this presentation and then also the Old Capital Multifamily Financing White Paper from me. I can send that over to you. And then Number 2 is qualification. So we talked about the net worth and liquidity requirements. So maybe consider completing a personal financial statement. And then you can set up a time to talk with me about kind of what you're trying to do, what you're thinking, what you want to get into, any questions you may have. And then once you have that, start underwriting new listings, start making offers, and then finally close the deal. So I guess with that being said, Phil, I will go ahead and wrap this up. My email is right down here to the left. My phone number is down at the bottom. So shoot me a text or send me an email if you'd like a copy of the presentation, or if you want a copy of our multifamily financing white paper. Happy to provide either.
Fantastic, man. So much awesome value in this. Thank you so much, John. This has been rad. I can't wait to get this deal closed together and do many, many more. Let's see. I know we still got some comments rolling in. Does anyone want to play with a spreadsheet for 10 minutes? We are over time. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I can do it if there's interest, and we can see why some of the things that John covered are so important to not only winning deals, but also making sure that your deal is viable. Okay. Wow. Okay. They said yes. John, is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool.
Jamie, is that cool? Jamie's probably asleep, man. This has been an amazing couple of hours, but it's getting late here on the East Coast. All right, cool. Let me see if I can share. I'm kicking your share off, John. Sorry.
What could also be cool too, Phil, is once we're under application, we can do another webinar, and we can just kind of go through your deal, go through the financing. We can talk about the checklist and, kind of different things that you need to provide, kind of do like a live, analysis of how it's all going.
That's how this whole Wednesday night call started for me. I just asked a few friends, do you want to follow me around on this deal? And, 2 grew to 5, grew to 10, grew to 20, and, kind of ebbs and flows, new faces, old faces. And it's cool. And I know that Jamie and his awesome group, his Facebook meetup group, that it's kind of the same genesis of just trying to help one another. So anyway, guys, I'm not going to give exact terms as this deal is still in transit, but this is what came right from the broker. An ask of 1.3. They suggested we get a loan, 75% leverage, which is reasonable for Norfolk, Virginia. Yes. So that's what a lot of people were going off of. 5.5%, 25-year AM. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty in the interest of time here, so just take my word for it. The seller's average income per unit, $761. So I threw a little vacancy in to say that we're going to do a little bit worse year one. Their NOI allegedly is a little over 110. I'm pro forma-ing a 90 NOI because, again, I'd rather be pleasantly surprised and make more money than not enough. Okay. So at a 75% leverage, no interest only, here's our debt service, principal, interest. We make 20 grand off the deal, and we have a debt service coverage ratio of 1.27, which for our standard market is not going to cut it. We got to have a 1.3. Right, John?
1.25.
1.25? Okay, so we barely, by the skin of our teeth, survive at a conservative underwriting year one fully amortized. But wait, check this out, because this is why I won the deal, guys. We're not doing 75% because I checked with my lender before I submit an LOI. We're doing 80%, right?
Right.
And the bond market's kind of taking a dump. So we're not at 5.5%. We're at 5.06. And I submitted the, the term sheet that John provided for me along with my offer. So I didn't look like a dummy. Okay. And we're not doing a 25-year AM, we're doing a 30. But let's see what happens when we just switched it 5% on the loan to value and switch the interest rate, how our debt service coverage ratio is affected. Well, that's not correct, is it?
1.24.
Yeah. How did that go the wrong way? Something's wrong. What did I screw up? Oh, okay. Yeah. It went down because I'm leveraged higher.
Right.
Duh. Sorry, guys. But what did go up is our income went up about $3 grand. So we're flirting with that problem that John mentioned, that maybe you can't get 80% leverage in a lot of deals because it's hard to make the cover. But what we didn't change yet is the community banks are offering 20 or 25 year amortizations. Gino mentioned this as well. Because I talked to my lender, I know we can do 30. Let me see if that fixes our little problem here. Come on. Update spreadsheet. There we go. Magic. 1.35 debt cover. And that is a pretty ugly worst case kind of scenario. I think we're going to do way better than that on the income. But when we just adjusted those couple of things, we now have a deal that works. The other offers, the broker told me, were very close to my net, but they didn't get it because they were operating off a 75% leverage with community banks. So they did not. Gino's thing is buy right, finance right, manage right, right? So part of buying right is knowing what your financing options are. So I didn't beat them on price, I beat them on terms, and that's won us the deal, my team the deal. And what's really cool is IO here. The last example has us making 17 grand year one very conservatively, an investment of about 350. That some fees are overinflated here. Let's see what that looks like interest only. A debt coverage ratio of 1.75, and we have that for the first 3 years, which is pretty awesome. And our income just doubled because we're not paying this principal payment, right? The first 3 years. So it enables us to sock away some cash flow, 40, 50, 60,000 the first 3 years, conservatively. Have really nice cash on cash returns for my investors, my partners, right? The guys doing the work. And as we turn over units, do some reno, raise some rents, charge back some utilities, stuff like that, by the time we do start paying principal in year 4, we're still solidly in the double digits on the cash and cash return. So that is the power of knowing your financing options. Any questions on that right off the bat? So Jason, that spreadsheet is a buddy of mine named David Tupin. I wish I had like his website or something. I'll put his name in the chat. Look him up on Facebook. He's pretty active in a lot of the multifamily groups. You know, there's some other great analyzers out there, like Michael Blanc's got a really, really powerful one. But what I like about David's is Obsidian Capital, exactly, is David's company. What I really like about David's is it's easily like explainable to folks that maybe don't look at this stuff all day. And exactly, he sells it for $250, worth every penny. I love the thing. So let's see here. What else do we have? So the loan AM, yes, we changed that to a 30-year AM from a 25, which is what the community banks would have quoted us. Let's see here. Keith, hey, thanks for coming on, brother. Joe's back, awesome. And I think that's it for as far as questions. And Jamie, yes, David's a Michigan guy. You should get him on your show if you haven't already. Cool. Anything else, friends? Jamie, you want to hop back on, brother, and close this thing out? Thank you, Steve. Thanks for hanging out. Nova, appreciate it. Katie, thank you, thank you. I see Jamie chatting. There he is. There's that beautiful man. Unmute yourself, though.
There you go.
There we go.
How about now?
Dude, amazing. So much fun. Thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you, John. Anything else to close this out? I hope, I see that you're recording this. I hope we can post it somewhere.
Yeah, so I'll have this chopped up into 2 pieces. I'll have the Gino interview, and then I'll have this part of it for you, and we can post them both in all the groups as well as wherever you do it. So yeah, we'll get this all taken care of so everybody can see it. But no, man, this was great. Thank you so much to both of you for jumping on and doing this.
Meech is on here.
Hey, Meech. Money.
Right.
Awesome. Jamie, thanks for having us on. And Phil, thanks for having me too. And Gino's a tough act to follow, but glad to do it.
You did it, man. You killed it.
Did it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great stuff. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Have a wonderful night. It looks like we kept most people, which is incredible, man. It's unbelievable.
We might have to do this more often.
I think so. So next month we got Matt Aitchison, Matty A, you know him. Dude's a big time flipper, multi-millionaire. He's just getting into multifamily and syndication. He'll be my guest next month, and we can easily pair up. He loves him some Phil, so we can easily pair up Phil's presentation after that. I don't know what you'll have then, if you have a guest or if you have deals that you're going over, but I think this worked. You guys can tell us if you think that's the case, but I think it works to have them both. I was a little fearful that it's too much in one night, but I don't know. The reception we've got here, it seems like it's a nice doubleheader thing. So we'll roll with it. We'll get going next month and go from there. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you both, and hope everyone has a great night.
Great. Thanks, guys.
All right. Good night. See you soon.
Thanks.